For 3 long years, the entire world believed the book was completely closed on Alex Murdaugh. He was the untouchable heir to a century-old legal dynasty. The man who systematically stole millions from the crippled and the grieving. And, ultimately, the man who brutally gunned down his own wife and son in the dark at their family estate, all to buy himself a little more time. We all saw the trial. We all heard the verdict. The gavel banged, sealing his fate with 2 consecutive life sentences. The monster was locked away, the key was thrown out, and the true crime world moved on. But on May 13, 2026, everything we thought we knew about the trial of the century was completely ripped to shreds. In a unanimous, absolute bombshell of a decision, the state Supreme Court just threw out Alex Murdaugh's murder convictions. Let me say that again, because it almost sounds impossible. The double murder conviction of the most famous killer in modern American history has just been completely overturned. How does a man with a mountain of evidence against him suddenly get his conviction erased? What dark, behind-the-scenes corruption forced the highest court to tear up the guilty verdict? And the question that is terrifying an entire state right now, does this mean Alex Murdaugh is about to walk free? Do not click away, because the reason this massive trial just fell apart is infinitely more sinister than anyone realized, and the fallout is going to shake the justice system to its core. Part 2, The Illusion of a Bulletproof Case. To understand how catastrophic this 2026 ruling is, we have to look back at the illusion we were all sold in 2023. If you followed the original trial, you remember feeling like the prosecution had an absolute slam dunk. The state built a timeline so tight it felt suffocating. They proved Murdaugh was bleeding money, drowning in debt, and desperate to distract the authorities from his collapsing financial empire. But the nail in the coffin? The infamous kennel video. For months, Alex Murdaugh looked investigators in the eye and swore he was asleep at the main house when Maggie and Paul were slaughtered. He swore he never went down to those dog kennels. But from the grave, his son Paul provided the ultimate witness testimony. A single Snapchat video, pulled from Paul's phone, captured Alex's voice at the exact scene of the crime, just minutes before the murders took place. It was the ultimate gotcha moment. The jury heard it, the world heard it, and we all collectively agreed, he is guilty. Case closed. But what the cameras didn't show us, and what the jury didn't know, was that the integrity of the trial itself was secretly being poisoned from the inside out. While we were all staring at the evidence, the very people hired to protect the legal process were allegedly rigging the game. And that brings us to the shocking 2026 Supreme Court document that just blew the doors off this entire case. Part 3, The Clerk Who Rigged the Game. The Supreme Court didn't just overturn the conviction, they eviscerated the person responsible for protecting the jury, Colleton County Clerk of Court, Becky Hill. In any trial, the jury is supposed to be put in a bubble. They aren't allowed to watch the news, they aren't allowed to discuss the case, and they are absolutely not supposed to be influenced by court officials. But according to the state's highest court, Becky Hill didn't just pop that bubble, she actively poisoned it. The 5 justices voted unanimously, and their 27-page opinion did not hold back. They wrote that Hill completely crossed the line and egregiously attacked Murdaugh's credibility. Instead of remaining neutral, she allegedly held secret conversations with the jurors. When Alex Murdaugh took the stand to testify in his own defense, the most critical moment of the entire trial, Hill allegedly told the jury to watch his body language and not to let him fool them. She was actively planting the seeds of guilt before they even heard a single word of his testimony. She was stripping away his constitutional presumption of innocence. But here is the detail that truly makes this an unprecedented scandal. Why would a respected court clerk risk a massive, multi-million-dollar double murder trial? Why put her finger on the scales of justice? For a book deal. The Supreme Court pointed out that Hill was seeking publicity to sell copies of her true crime book, literally titled Behind the Doors of Justice. In their brutal ruling, the justices stated, as her book's title suggests, it turns out Hill was quite busy behind the doors of justice, thwarting the integrity of the justice system she was sworn to protect and uphold. Because one woman allegedly wanted to cash in on a true crime bestseller, a double murder conviction just vanished into thin air. Part 4, The Fatal Flaw of the Financial Crimes. But Becky Hill wasn't the only reason the Supreme Court pulled the plug on the verdict. They also pointed a massive spotlight on a fatal mistake made by the trial judge himself. If you watched the trial, you know the prosecution spent weeks, literally weeks, parading victims of Alex Murdaugh's financial crimes onto the stand. They detailed how he systematically stole roughly $12 million from grieving families, disabled clients, and his own law partners. The prosecution argued this was necessary to prove why he committed the murders. He was desperate to distract everyone from his collapsing financial house of cards. The Supreme Court completely disagreed. In their May 2026 ruling, the justices declared that the trial court let the prosecution go far too long and far too deep into the financial crimes. They ruled that dumping weeks of theft and fraud evidence onto the jury didn't prove a motive for murder. Instead, it just heavily biased the jury against him. It made them hate him for being a thief, making it almost impossible for them to impartially judge him for murder. Between a compromised jury and a highly prejudiced mountain of financial evidence, the state's highest court ruled they had absolutely no choice. The trial was fundamentally unfair. The guilty verdict was completely invalid. Part 5, The 40-Year Reality Check. So, with his double murder conviction completely erased, that brings us to the multi-million-dollar question the internet has been screaming since May 13th. Is Alex Murdaugh packing his bags and leaving prison today? No. Not even close. While this is an absolutely massive legal victory for Murdaugh and his defense team, he is not walking out of those prison doors anytime soon. Remember all those financial crimes we just talked about? Even though the Supreme Court said those crimes shouldn't have dominated his murder trial, Murdaugh still committed them. He previously pleaded guilty to stealing roughly $12 million from his clients. As we speak, he is sitting in a federal prison serving a 40-year sentence for being a thief, a liar, and a fraud. He also has a concurrent 27-year state sentence. Unless he lives to be well into his 90s, he will likely die behind bars regardless of the murder charges. But for the murders of Maggie and Paul? In the eyes of the law, the slate has essentially been wiped clean. Alex Murdaugh is legally an innocent man regarding their deaths. Part 6, The Nightmare of a Retrial. This is where the story goes from shocking to a complete logistical nightmare. South Carolina's Attorney General, Alan Wilson, immediately released a statement saying they will aggressively seek to retry Alex Murdaugh for the murders as soon as possible. He made it crystal clear, nobody is above the law. But actually pulling off a second trial? That is going to be a legal circus of epic proportions. First, there is the cost. The original trial drained millions of taxpayer dollars. Now, they have to do it all over again. Second, tracking down all those witnesses years later and getting them to testify again is incredibly difficult. Memories fade, people move on, and defense attorneys use those inconsistencies to destroy the state's timeline. But the biggest hurdle of all? Finding an impartial jury. The Supreme Court just threw out the last conviction because the jury was allegedly tampered with. How in the world is South Carolina going to find 12 people who haven't heard about the most publicized, televised, and podcast true crime case in the state's history? How do you find a jury that doesn't already know about the kennel video, the missing millions, or the fact that a previous jury already found him guilty once? The Murdaugh saga just proved the ultimate, terrifying truth about the American justice system. It is never over until it is officially over. The rules are the rules, and if the state breaks them, even to put away a monster, the whole house of cards comes crashing down. Part 7, What now? A second trial could mean brand new evidence that was never admitted before. It could mean explosive new witnesses. And without the distraction of the financial crimes, it is going to be a pure, high-stakes battle over a single, chilling timeline. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think South Carolina will actually be able to convict him a second time with a brand new jury, or will this massive error by the court clerk let him beat the murder charges forever? Is it even possible to get a fair trial in 2026 for a case this famous? Drop your exact theory down in the comments right now. I'll be reading and replying to them for the next hour. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the updates on the retrial. and I'll see you in the next video.